128. Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Yokoyama. I'm an adult services librarian at Lake Oswego Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation, an update of the Clackamas County Restorative Justice Program with Miles Brady. Miles Brady currently leads the Restorative Justice and Community Mediation Program for Clackamas County. He presented on Clackamas County's Restorative Justice Plan last year as part of Lake Oswego Reads, and we are excited to welcome him back today to provide this update. Please give a warm welcome to Miles Brady.
Hello. Can you hear me? Sit a little. Okay. All right. How about that? Better? Yes? No? How about now? Oh, now I gotta be like, okay. Well, thank you, Alicia, for that. As she said, my name is Miles Brady, and I'm the Restorative Justice Coordinator for Clackamas County. So about 3 years ago, I took this position, and the idea was to build it from the ground up. Clackamas County had a restorative justice program, and I kind of sat on the shelf for a while, and we dusted it off, and we went for a grant and got it from the Criminal Justice Commission. The grant that we're working with now is our second grant from the Criminal Justice Commission, and this is allowing us to actually implement the program. I'll give a quick background on myself. As she mentioned, I'm a former gunsmith and firearms instructor, and that led me to a career in conflict management because part of my body of work was teaching folks de-escalation skills and not just to, go around shooting folks. It's not a good thing to do. And I became a mediator, and then after that, I started doing my own private work around conflict, and that led me to work with Clackamas County. And working with Clackamas County, this opportunity was offered to me to run the Restorative Justice Project. I will say this is not where I saw myself, from gunsmith and trainer to Restorative Justice Coordinator. And so I will give a little bit of, I want to start there. I'll start here. So I'll give a quick overview of what I'm going to go through. The approach that we're doing with law enforcement, the outreach approach that we're doing, the RJ volunteer cohort that I've convened. I'll be convening a Clackamas RJ committee, and youth support services that we will be offering, the RJ Youth Advisory Board, system support, and restorative justice facilitator trainings. So the first thing that came to my mind when working with restorative justice was law enforcement, using law enforcement as a direct referral source for cases. So currently, I have a relationship with Sandy Police Department, and with Sandy Police Department, their main interest is doing direct referrals for deflection and diversion. The diversion piece comes when a kid gets in trouble and There's an actual case filed. There's an actual report filed, and they don't want to put the kid through the criminal justice system. Diversion means that if they complete the process, then there's no actual formal charges. Now, this is great because even though the kid touches the criminal justice system, they're not involved in it deeply, and they get to come and do restorative justice. I should take a step back and explain what restorative justice is. So restorative justice is what I call an enhancement to the criminal justice system. It's not, a lot of folks hear restorative justice and think soft on crime and, give people a slap on the wrist because they say sorry. It's not. It is a facilitated dialogue between the harmed party and the offender of the crime. And in that facilitated dialogue, at Clackamas County, we use a co-facilitator model, which is we have two facilitators who facilitate the conversation. In this conversation, the harmed party gets to ask all the things that they need to ask to help them move through the crime. They get to speak on how the crime affected them. They get to speak to the trauma that they experienced. They get to speak to the harm. And it allows them to hear directly from the source and kind of remove the big bad wolf cloak from the offender and helps them move through the crime. While we use victim-centered approaches to the practice, we also are there to protect both parties, not just the harm party. So that means that just because the harm was committed against the harm party, we don't just let them in there to beat up the offender and go off on them. I did have a couple cases where they thought that was good. We do initial interviews, and the harm party actually expressed that they wanted to get in there and cuss out the youth. And I was like, yeah, we can't do that. That's not, we can't allow that. So, but we do allow for hard questions to be asked. We do allow for full accountability to be taken by the harm or the offender. And it gives the offender the chance to face what they've done, to face the person that they've harmed, to face the damage that they've done. And I've seen the process, I've facilitated the process, and when I say that it actually has a real tangible effect, I'll give a quick example. We had a kid who came in the process, he had a hoodie up, bandana on, tough guy act, walked in, and we explained the process. He agreed to go through with it, seemed to be operating in good faith, and we get to the dialogue, and I'm not sure what happened in him. I'm not sure. The people that were, the harmed parties were a married couple that just wanted to see him not face the criminal justice system, and they expressed that. And this kid, you could see his tough guy demeanor melt over the course of the dialogue. And by the end, he said, and I quote, "I didn't realize I was doing this to such nice people, and I'm sorry. And what can I do to help?" And they actually, one thing that happens after the dialogue or in the dialogue is that agreements can be made around restitution, reparations, or anything that the parties might agree to make things right between them. And they didn't want money because he broke their window, and they didn't want him to go to jail, but they wanted to build some relationship with him. And he suggested that they volunteer at an animal shelter together. And by the end of it, they were all like, the wife cried, and then the husband cried, and then the mom of the youth cried, and then the youth cried. I didn't cry. I just want to be clear. I got emotional, but I didn't cry. And these agreements are good faith agreements. They're not, solidified by law. Now, working with the DA and, the DA's office, that might change to where, things are contingent on an agreement being completed, but as of now, it's not. So that's the gist of criminal justice. Or, sorry, that's the gist of restorative justice. I say these words a lot, and so they all start to kind of blend together. And so the idea would be to use that facilitated dialogue process as a diversion from the criminal justice system. So the law enforcement department gets a case. The law enforcement department decides that this should not go to the law enforcement department in conjunction with the municipal courts, which I'm not going to get too into the court stuff because it's just boring. But they get to decide, like, this does qualify for restorative justice. And those criteria are decided between me and or my program and the law enforcement agency and whatever criminal justice department we're dealing with. And then they complete the process. If they complete the dialogue, then they receive diversion and they have no charges. Now, this is going to look different for every department that I'm working with. So far, working with Sandy, they're really excited about using their SROs or school resource officers to initiate referrals for this, which leads me to the second piece of what happens with the referral system with law enforcement, which would be an RJ citation deflection. Now, deflection differs from diversion because deflection means the officer makes the referral in the initial interaction with the youth. Diversion happens after the youth has been arrested and a report is filed. Diversion means on the street the officer intervenes in some sort of crime and decides this is not worth arresting this youth for. I'm going to deflect this to restorative justice. This is a piece that we're actually crafting customly for Sandy Department and what that's going to look like. And basically, it'll look like a ticket. You get a ticket for an RJ deflection, and when you complete the RJ process, that's it. There's no charges, there's no case filed. And this is where I really like this part of the program because the youth doesn't touch the criminal justice system at all. And in my experience, the youth involved in any level of the criminal justice system causes trauma and is very traumatic for that youth. And so being able to keep them completely away from it is the ideal goal. And we're developing what that looks like. Working with law enforcement departments, it's going to look different for each one. Just deciding how much time I want to spend on this. And so an interesting aspect to this, which two of my restorative justice volunteers are in the small audience, is something called surrogate restorative justice. And this happens when there's no actual victim or the victim does not want to participate in restorative justice, but the youth is still willing. And I'll give you a good example of this is there was a case where the youth blew up a tree, because apparently that's just something young kids do now, is like he blew up a tree. Turns out it was a historic tree. And there was under $1,000 worth of damage, but several hundred. But there was no person to harm. There was no person that was harmed. There was no person or no victim. But they didn't want this kid to go to jail because I believe the kid was around 12, and they just didn't want to see him go to jail. And so one of the officers offered to stand in, and this is where the surrogacy part comes in, where if there is no victim or the victim is not willing to participate, we use plainclothes officers to stand in as the victim or the harmed party. And it allows them to still complete the dialogue, and the youth has to face the consequences. The youth has to take accountability for what they did. And it's just a really unique aspect to the program, which we will be doing at some point. We have to get surrogate training. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that I'm going to do. And one thing about restorative justice is not a lot of people know about it. I've been in conflict management almost 10 years now. And I was in it about 5 before I even heard the term restorative justice. And so outreach is one big aspect of my program. And doing things like this, speaking at the local library, the libraries within the county. And I plan to do it at as many as I can. And thank you, Alicia, for your help with that. And in the presentations going forward, I would like to include a lot of our system partners and community partners, such as Juvenile Services, which is where the Restorative Justice Program originated in Clackamas County. We have a strong partnership with Latino Network and my volunteer cohort. Clackamas County has a large pool of restorative justice volunteers. Okay, good. And so going back to the volunteer piece, to be a restorative justice facilitator, you must take a 35-hour restorative justice training course, one that I gave last year and will probably give again this year. These two people in the back were you in my last one? Okay, yeah. And so to be a restorative justice facilitator with Clackamas County, you must have your 35-hour training. And then there's a tri-county agreement between Multnomah County, Washington County, and Clackamas County. And there's an application that you fill out, and when that form is filled out, you now can volunteer for all 3 programs, because Clackamas and Multnomah, or Washington and Multnomah, also have restorative justice programs. The trouble with the restorative justice, did not mean to do that. The trouble with a lot of restorative justice programs is, especially system-run ones, is that cases are trickling in, which is why I have the grant to do the work to increase our referral system. And cases tend to kind of trickle in, especially like when we had just the juvenile services program, we might get 5 to 8 cases in a year. And we're looking to increase that to 35 to 40 cases in a year. But with that, the volunteers don't get a lot of experience. And they don't get a lot of involvement in the program. And so with the restorative justice volunteer cohort that I've assembled, the idea is to keep their hands in the process, keep their hands in the program, keep their minds on restorative justice, and enhance their skills. And so engaging them past the training, because a lot of RJ volunteers get their training and then that's it. They might do 1 or 2 cases before they fall off the map with us. Facilitator skills are what I like to call perishable skills. They can go away. And so keeping folks engaged in the work is one way. Keeping folks engaged in the work, and especially in this cohort, I'm going to do mock cases, because that's something that we use in our training, not just for restorative justice, but for mediation training as well, is role plays. And that's a very big factor in training, because you get that, even though it's kind of staged, you still get that hands-on, put your brain in the moment of bam, 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 what are you doing next? So keeping their skills sharp. And it gives them preparation for the real thing. When you volunteer at Clackamas County, we don't just throw you right into facilitation. We pair you with, because we use the co-facilitator model, we don't just throw you in, we pair you with an experienced facilitator who then kind of guides you and walks you through your first couple. And there are some volunteers that have been with us for years, and so we have a very strong base, but I want to increase it. I want to increase the work that we're doing, and I want to increase the base. And this volunteer cohort is one way that I'm doing it, and it definitely allows me to further my engagement with the community. This is the cow I was talking about. Doesn't he look like just like a cool cow? I don't know why. friendly. So before I came on to Clackamas County, like I said before, there was a previous restorative justice program that kind of got shelved. But along with that program came the Restorative Justice Committee of Clackamas County. And this consisted of community leaders, nonprofit leaders, system partner leaders, and community members. When the program got shelved, this also got shelved. And I'm actually in the process of reconvening this, although I'm going to change the name because committee, I just don't like that word. When I hear committee, I just think we just about to talk a lot, and I don't want to do that. So council was advised to me by one of my volunteers. I like that word. CBO, you'll let me say that it's community-based organization. That's just the acronym. I work for the government now. All I do is acronyms, apparently. So community-based organizations are going to be the other half of this. Well, a third of this. The other third will be schools. Community-based partnerships, though, like the one that I have with Latino Network, are vital because it allows especially culturally specific communities to directly refer cases to me without having any system involvement other than my program. So with Latino Network, we have what's called a memorandum of understanding, which basically says it's an unofficial contract that says we have a partnership, these are the terms of the partnership, and we can dissolve it at any point. But Latino Network at this point can send me directly referrals for youth restorative justice cases, which is great. And it's something that I want to increase with many different community-based organizations. So I actually have several of my contractors working with the Slavic community, the Chinese community, and more of the Latino community in Clackamas County. And we plan to expand to many more. But not just culturally specific. We want to expand to youth organizations, especially community-based youth organizations, because this is a restorative justice program for youth. One of the aspects that I really enjoy about this program is the support services that I can offer to youths, both the victim and the harm party, or the harm party and the offender, after the dialogue. The tough guy kid that I spoke about earlier, when we spoke one-on-one after the dialogue, he said, I don't know what to do. He's like, I want to join the military, but I'm not going to make it. I need structure in my life. Now, this is a big thing for a youth under the age of 13 to say. Excuse me. And so I'm affiliated with an organization that consists of veterans and former military personnel, and I called one of my buddies and said, hey, I got this kid in my program, and he wants to join the military, but he's going down the wrong path. What can you do? And they actually, he told me, send me his information. I connected with the mother. I gave him the information, and they connected him with a veteran as a mentor. And last time I heard, the kid was doing quite well. And so support services like that, and not just for mentorship, but family support as well. A lot of times the youth that are coming from single family homes, and there's needs that those families have. And I can being a part of Clackamas County, I can connect them with county services, which I'm very happy about. And then it just builds relationship and awareness in the community around restorative justice and the resources available through Clackamas County. Sorry. Again, this being a youth program, Clackamas County has something called the Youth Advisory Board. We call it YAB, another acronym. And this board consists of youth populated from all over Clackamas County. And one of the things that I want to do with this program is have youth voice involved in the structure of the program, not just a bunch of adults telling youth, like, this is going to be good for you, but what's going to help them engage more, what's going to help them take this seriously and participate in it. Thank you, Rosemary. Dying a little up here. And the Youth Advisory Board is going to allow us to actually have direct youth advising in the program and direct youth guidance in the program in terms of our practices, our principles, what methods are we using, and where we're not doing great, and how can we improve. If you're going to serve a population, I believe that you should take into account what that population has to say, even if it's youth. And a lot of times in our society, we kind of push youth to the side. And so this is going to allow youth to directly influence how they're handled in the criminal justice system. Now, another aspect of restorative justice that makes it actually difficult makes it difficult to advance restorative justice is there's a large lack of data. There's a large lack of data, and data is required to get funding. And the data is required to get buy-in. The first thing that I heard from not just the district attorney, but police chiefs and the sheriffs was, where's your data? What can you show me tangibly that says that this works? There's not a whole lot of that data out there. And so one thing that I've done is partner with an organization run by Evan Elkin out of PSU called, I'm not going to remember that right now, Reclaiming Youth, that's what it is. Reclaiming Futures, sorry, there it is. I work with a lot of programs, y'all, so Reclaiming Futures, and they specialize specifically in restorative justice data collection, which is amazing. And so I've allotted a lot of funds from this current grant to allow him to basically craft from the ground up a data collection system for us so that we can collect comprehensive data around all the metrics that are desired by our system partners to move the RJ forward, but also collect data that isn't so much desired. Everybody wants to know about recidivism rates and crime reduction rates, but I want to collect the data that shows youth participation and youth figure out a way to measure the health of the youth after the dialogue and the path of the youth after the dialogue, and show that it's not just preventing them from committing the same crime, but it's actually shifting their path to a better one. Data collection is not my thing. I'm not going to go deep into how that's done. That's his job. We're paying him a lot of money for that, so I'm going to let him do that. But yeah, that is a massive part of the program going forward. Okay. I went through that way faster than I thought, so I can kind of go back, actually. Actually, I want to invite one of my volunteers up, Rosemary, if you'd like, to speak on what called you to restorative justice and why you believe in it and anything else you want to say about restorative justice.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, friends. Can you hear me? So I'm Reverend Rosemary. I live in Portland, and I stumbled upon Miles' restorative justice program through a mediation program that I was in, and I was very excited to learn what restorative justice is to begin with. I was able to do that I took the training. It was 35 hours. And what was really important and what I learned from it was I didn't realize how many youth were actually being put into the prison system and, you know, having really, really horrible, terrible, traumatic times. So being able to see that youth have an opportunity to not even have to go through that and to be able to be spoken with and to be able to find a way to have solutions and conflict management on their own through this program is absolutely fascinating and wonderful. And I think it's very good for the Tri-County as well. So, yeah, really exciting. Yeah.
Now, I know there's only a few of us, but did anyone have questions? Okay.
Pass you this mic so that the folks on our live stream can hear you. Just raise your hand if you have a question.
Was there any percentage of recidivism?
So recidivism rates look differently for every program, but there is trying to think of the last, I don't want to say like concrete numbers because again, it's different for every program, but there was a program out of Colorado in Boulder that's like the golden standard for my data sources. And they did an adult RJ program as well as a youth RJ program and ran them tandemly, and they had an 88% recidivism rate for both, which, you know, when the funds are properly invested in it, it just shows what can be done with a restorative justice program. But again, I know about that data because I work in the field, but there are not a lot of folks that, and I know, well, and I work in the field and I know folks that went to Boulder specifically to observe their restorative justice program. And so it's things that get that kind of information out there more that's going to lead to more funding, that leads to more abilities for RJ programs, that'll lead to more recidivism. So, yeah, it's frustrating because on one hand, in my experience with restorative justice, people like the sound of it. People like kind of like the buzzwordiness of it. But when it comes to actually like implementing it, it pushes so hard against the standard that we have for our criminal justice system that when the crunch time comes and people are like, okay, well, now let's implement this, you get a lot of pullback and you get a lot of hesitation. And I've experienced that specifically with implementing my program, is people have been really receptive to it initially, and then I start telling them the work that it requires and the steps that it takes and the depth of change that occurs in your system when you do this. And then you get nervousness. And so having that data is actually going to help solidify a lot of confidence in the program and in RJ's ability. Now, I was going to tell this story in the beginning, but I decided not to. But now I got time. I'll tell it. My path has been, my path to RJ has been completely random. Like, again, it started as a firearms instructor and a gunsmith, leading into conflict management and mediation, and then on a whim took this restorative justice project and ran with it. And it wasn't until I got deep into the work that I realized that I had an experience with restorative justice as a kid and not realized it. And it was my mother. Now, my mother is the best woman in the world. And very creatively, she found ways to manage me and the 5 younger sisters that I was raised with and 2 younger brothers. She called them love circles. Now, I'll explain what that is if we did something harmful to the other, we then all had to sit in a circle and hold hands and explain why we did what we did, and then say nice things to the other person. Now, I don't know about you, but as a 12-year-old boy, that was bad. I remember at one point I was like, "Can you just hit me?" like, but I experienced like a shift in the relationships between me and my siblings and the way that we showed up to each other, because we had to listen to the other person say, this is what that did to me. This is how that affected me. And it hits differently and it sits differently, especially as a youth. And so, remembering that experience drives me in doing this work, because I know for a fact, one, having experienced it myself, but two, having seen dialogues where the youth is like transformed midway. I'll give another example. There was a case where a youth started a fight with another youth. Second youth, the harm party, we call them, made a comment about an incident that happened with the offender's brother. The kid was harmed really badly, and the offending kid took offense and what needed to defend his brother, and started a fight with him, and won the fight. And then the kid immediately arrested, on school property, and someone in the system decided that this case should be kicked to me, and it was. And we do this. One of the ways that we assure the safety of our participants is we do an initial interview for the youth that offended, and we do an initial interview for the youth that was harmed. And that's to make sure that they understand what the process looks like. That's to make sure that they understand what my job is as a facilitator, and understand like the do's and don'ts of the process. Like I said, we're not here to let them come in and hit the offender with a brick because they're upset. Like, that's not what we're here to do. And in the initial interview, he just seemed ice cold. He was just like, yeah, I did it. And okay, we'll do the process, cool. And I gave it a 50-50 chance that this process was going to be successful. And then we get into the dialogue, and the harmed youth is being really passive and quiet. And as facilitators, it's our job to drive the conversation when needed. The idea is to let the youth, pick the path of the conversation on their own, but sometimes it does take facilitating. And in this process of guiding the conversation, we found that harmed party youth had actually bullied offending party's youth brother. And there's always another layer to the story, with any conflict, there's another layer. And they wound up in a 45-minute conversation with each other. And in the dialogues, we always have at least one support person per youth, and that's usually the parent. And the parents didn't say anything. My co-facilitator and I didn't say anything, but they just had this deep conversation about their experiences and why they did what they did. And towards the end of it, the offending youth said, look, I know what I did wasn't the right thing to do, but it's what I did. And I stood by it. And I knew it was wrong, but I stood by it. But I'm sorry. And I'm 40 years old. I know grown men that don't have that level of self-awareness around their actions. And he stood up and he reached his arm across the table and they shook hands and sat down. I was like, we're done. It's not getting any better than that. We're gonna, I was like, do you have anything in the offending youth? He then apologized, and that was that. And there was this because in the beginning there was a very contentious energy around both of them standing strong in what they did. And through that dialogue, I watched this transformation of both youths, and they both wound up walking out laughing. And the offending youth stopped me, and he reached out his hand to me, and strong handshake. It's like, hey, you're good at what you do. Keep doing this. I was like, oh, okay. Like, that affected me because here's this 13-year-old kid that saw value in the process and saw change in himself in the process and wanted to see it continued. And so, yeah, that's what drives me in this work. I think that's...
Otherwise,
Thank you for explaining all that. That was really interesting talk. And I wonder, I've heard in the news, I'm not sure if it's around here or other states or somewhere, but I've heard that they have restorative justice programs in schools to help with conflict happening in schools that's kind of student run or they must have adults helping them too, but does that happen around here as far as you know? Or is it something that you would like to see more of?
So thank you for reminding me of that because that was a piece I wanted to touch on. It does happen. I know that North Clackamas School District does have a restorative justice coordinator, I believe, still. And they do. A lot of schools have restorative justice processes in the schools, but it's hit or miss on. It's not a universal thing throughout the school districts. It's hit or miss depending on the school's capabilities and capacity. One thing that this program is aiming to do is take the lift of capacity and capability off the school and just create the similar referral system that I have with law enforcement, create a similar referral system with schools where they don't have to have a facilitator on site. They don't have to have facilities on site to manage this. They just simply call us and we provide them with all the services they need. And this is actually going to be, initially, in my initial grant with the CJC, there were some misunderstandings in the grant application around what our plan was because I wanted to focus heavily on schools. Not sure how that miscommunication led us to be deemed ineligible for the grant. Yeah, I don't know. But luckily, it all worked out. We wound up actually getting the grant. And we will be expanding into schools as much as we can within the parameters of the grant and the funds that we have. But the long-term goal is to make sure that schools in Clackamas County have access to this program because, as we all know, capacity for schools in anything is low and limited. So I think I broke that. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But I do want to see schools have complete access to a restorative justice program that doesn't rely on their capacity and their capability because teachers are stretched thin as it is and school funds are stretched thin as it is. So if my program has the ability to lend them all they need to implement these processes, then we're going to do it. It's just a matter of, again, they have limited capacity to even implement these things, and so it's just going to take time to get it in. I guess I can go on to something. So the restorative justice program that I coordinate is housed in what's called Resolution Services for Clackamas County. Now, Resolution Services is my team. I'm very proud of that team. We are a very good and capable team. But we don't just offer the restorative justice services. We have a small claims mediation program. We have a community mediation program. We have a family law mediation program. And we also put on a number of trainings that are available to the public of Clackamas County at large. Some of them are free, like the restorative justice training that I put on, and some of them are paid. But all of that is available. All that information is available on the Clackamas website under Resolution Services. One of my favorite things about working for the county is doing the trainings. And as I said before, I started as a mediator and I actually ran the community mediation program, it was fun. It was like my own personal soap opera. But all the cases involve goats. I don't know what it is in Clackamas County. Everybody has a goat, and there's a conflict around that goat, and I don't know why, but it was fascinating. But community mediation is where we call it neighbor to neighbor. You know, your neighbor has a car that's too loud, or your neighbor throws parties that's too loud, or your neighbor has a goat that ate your prize roses. That's a real case quote. But you don't want to take it to court. You don't want to take it to the legal system. You can bring it to, Clackamas County Resolution Services, file a case for mediation. Now, mediation, like restorative justice, is voluntary. If both parties agree, then we provide a mediator to facilitate a conversation about the conflict and hopefully lead to a resolution of the conflict. And that service is free. And again, one of those things that mediation, not a lot of people know of or know exists or are even aware that they have access to it, and especially in Clackamas County. I love mediation. It's what got me to where I am, because it's working with people on conflict, and that's just what I specialize in. Small claims is not free. But that's more, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are aware of small claims. You know, somebody crashes into your car or owes you money. Family law, I don't know a whole lot about. I don't do family law. That is a whole different thing. But we do a lot of things like custody case negotiations, parental time negotiations, that kind of thing. And in our trainings, we have a great lead trainer, Aaron Ruff, who leads our basic mediation trainings, which is how you become a mediator. We actually provide the trainings that allow you to become a mediator. That's a 40-hour, usually 5-day training. But her and I have actually been collaborating on new projects for trainings around de-escalation, which is my specialty, because I got really good at teaching de-escalation as a firearms instructor, because that's like step one of, being an armed individual in this country, is learning how to de-escalate. So I'm really excited about what we will have to offer around that. Any questions before? Nope? Okay. Well, I think I got everything.
Yeah, thank you so much. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, it's wonderful work that you're doing, and thank you so much, and thank you for sharing it, and thank you all for attending. Have a wonderful afternoon.
That would take even 12% from the criminal to the future. That's really, yeah, everybody would like to go 95%.
Yeah.
But,
But
yeah,
better take that 88 and run with
yeah,
it.
you take that 12% and step them up.
I will.
Because once you get, especially the younger people, going forward, they'll look at it as a brighter adventure.
Exactly.
You did good.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Not yet, but that's my first stop. I will, thank you. Yeah, Lake Oswego Police Department in Lake Oswego as